Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I feel honored to be here in this very famous institute. And I asked before coming here that you're probably well-informed public, and that I'm afraid I'm not going to give you more information than you have, but I will try, because I think that a lot of misunderstanding about the Arab Spring is now the main problem. It should be reminded that the spark of the Tunisian revolution, which later triggered the Arab Spring, brought an unprecedented wave of hope and real change in the Arab world. But following these events, many politicians, analysts, and journalists from East and West alike have embarked on speculative assessment on the chances of success of the countries transitioning toward democracy. More than 2 years into the Arab uprising, the only safe assessment possible is that these countries are trying to build different new systems at varying pace and consequently with varying success. Although the underlying causes that led to the Arab Revolution were very similar, the transition process of these countries have taken dissimilar trajectories given the differential political, social, and economic factors that characterize their respective societies. So in fact, any attempt to reach an objective, balanced, and well-thought assessment on the transitional experience within the Arab Spring should definitely rely on those above-mentioned crucial elements. It goes without saying that any transitional period following a people's revolution occurring anywhere in the world against tyranny faces unavoidably huge challenges and threats. Challenges emanating from the very situation of unrest, social movements, spontaneous waves of protests against the previous injustice that are fed by the frustration of the past, and the space of freedom offered by the aftermath of a revolution. These challenges come also from the difficult economic, social, and political situations inherited from the previous regimes and worsened by the temporary paralysis of usual economic performances. Threats are those posed by people who want the statu quo to be recovered, to return. Those who lost their benefits, usually gained at times of rule of despotic regimes, ousted by the oppressed people. The threat are also originated from the growing security concerns imposed terrorist plans. What I can tell you is that now in Tunisia we are facing a lot of threats, mainly the threat of a counter-revolution, because as I said before, everywhere when you have a revolution, you have a counter-revolution. And you probably know that the counter-revolution, I wouldn't say that it's have overcome in Egypt, but I can tell you that the revolution is facing a deep crisis in Egypt. And that because what happened in Egypt, now in Tunisia, we're suffering also a harsh counter-revolution, and then we expect this revolution to grow more aggressive day after day. So this is the principal threat we are facing, because the people who lost power, who lost wealth, and who lost their privileges, they're not going to sit and just watch the revolution and democracy coming, being in charge of the country. So this is the first threat. And this is quite normal, because everywhere where you have revolution, you have counter-revolution. This is, I would say, a real law, universal law, everywhere where you go. The second threat that we are facing in Tunisia and also in the rest of the Arab world is the terrorist threat. Because don't forget that the Arab Spring, was extremely, I would say, the worst thing to happen for Al-Qaeda or for terrorist groups, because Al-Qaeda and the terrorist groups thought they will be the alternative, the only alternative to corrupt dictatorship. So when this peaceful and secular revolution occurred, they were quite surprised, and we thought that probably it's the end of Al-Qaeda. I mean, politically and ideologically, that would be the end of Al-Qaeda. But now, when we see what happened in Egypt, for instance, when you see that this the centrist part of the spectrum, of Islamist spectrum, played the role, who played the game of democracy, now are in jail or put aside, probably this would give more credibility to all what the Al-Qaeda and the terrorist group always said, that none of business with democracy. That's nothing. Those values are false values, and this would probably encourage and give more, once again, more credibility to what the Al-Qaeda and the terrorist group are saying. So this is probably the most, I would say, sad thing that happened to the Arab Spring, what happened in Egypt, because that means that the counter-revolution is now going, what happened in Egypt is that democracy has been betrayed by secular, betrayed by liberals, and that what probably a lot of Islamists will no longer give any credibility to democracy. And this is why democracy is in a mess in Egypt, because on the one hand, the Islamists would no longer believe in it, and on the other hand, the so-called liberal and the so-called leftists, the so-called secular, didn't accept to go to wait for the next election and to give the system, to accept that the system is when you want the election, you have to go until the term. And now the third problem for any country, in the Arab Spring, of course, is economy, because we have had this revolution mainly because of the economic problem, because of the employment, and the problem of employment and so forth. And now many people, even in Tunisia, they are saying, hey, we have made this revolution, but the situation didn't improve. And how can you expect the situation to improve when you have a political crisis, when you have a security crisis, and when the bureaucracy is waiting for a stable government? Because we have discovered that even when you have money, even when we can raise money for programs for inland area and so forth, even when you have the political will, it's not enough, because you have inherited the bureaucracy of the old regime, and the old regime would block everything you would do because it's not in their interests. So we're facing the huge expectation of the population. You are facing the bureaucracy. We're facing the bureaucracy of the old regime, blocking and doing all it can to make things not work. So you have the high level of expectation, no means. You inherited from the bureaucracy and from all kind of frustration, and you have to deal with this. So this is the situation all over the Arab world, but it depends of the structure of the country, the structure of the population. And in Tunisia, I can say that fortunately, we are facing those three challenges because we are lucky in a way, because we have homogeneous society, we have a well-educated population, we have a middle-class population, we have our army is a professional army, a disciplined army, not involved in politics. We are backed also, this is very important, we are backed also by our friends in Algeria, in Libya, we are backed by our friends in Europe, backed by the United States. All those countries would like the Arab Spring to prevail in Tunisia at last, because everybody knows that Tunisia is the last hope for the Arab Spring. So, but what would be the outcome of this? Personally, I'm confident, but the problem is that Tunisia is not an island. We are in a region where you have extreme instability. When you look to the map, we have Mali in the southern part of our frontiers. We have Libya. The situation is worsening everywhere in Egypt, in Syria, and so forth. So the situation is extremely tense. But once again, we have to do the job, because otherwise, this hope will fade, and democracy will be in an extremely dangerous situation in the Arab world. And once again, you will find people saying, hey, we told you that it's not, Arab do not fit with democracy, and it's cultural conflict and so forth. While you probably know that it's not, the narrative is not about Arabs with democracy. The narrative is about democracy itself. Plato, when he talked 25 centuries ago about could lead to chaos, and then chaos could lead to a new dictatorship. He was not talking about Arabs. He was talking about his fellow citizens in Athens. And you know probably that the people who elected Hitler were not Arabs. They were German, well-educated German. And you probably know that in France, after the collapse of the French army, the French didn't have any problem to live under dictatorship, French dictatorship. So it has nothing to do with Arabs or the Muslims. It had to do with democracy. Does it mean that new experimentation in the Arab world, and this new experimentation would show that we still have facing the same problem faced everywhere, and that we have to find a kind of solution to these problems. Yesterday I was saying that as a human rights activist, we fought for more than 2 decades, to have freedom of expression. And now we are facing the fact that freedom of expression means also freedom of disseminating rumors, freedom of having, using, the dirty money from capitalists, from old regime barons to attack the government, the elected government. And we have to be very careful, because if we do not accept the side effect of this freedom of expression, we could be labeled as a new dictators. But it's extremely frustrating to be insulted by people who were working with the old regime and using freedom of expression, to combat the democracy. The same thing when we are discovering that we fought for having independent judiciary, but now the judges are independent toward the government, but not independent towards political parties. So they are politicized, and they are working. Some of them are working against the government, and we have to accept this. And also we know that probably the elections would be extremely difficult to hold. We would like this election to be fair elections and so forth, but we know that there will be a lot of money coming from inside the country and outside the country. So you see the kind of problems we are facing. They are the same problem of the implementation of democracy everywhere. But we have to find our own solution, and that's not easy. So you see, the narrative is not about Arabs, it's about democracy, how to implement democracy in this very specific cultural context. So, but I don't know if we will succeed, but I know that we are trying, and that we are trying our best. And please pray for us. We will work, but we would need probably your prayer and your support, your political support, if you can give us this kind of support. Well, I would like to finish by saying some words about the International Constitutional Court. I have had this idea 20 years ago. I remember that I felt at that time extremely frustrated, because our dictatorship, the dictatorship of Belayi, was a very bizarre dictatorship, because the ideology of this dictatorship was human rights. The ideology of this dictatorship was democracy. I never heard any political leader talking more about democracy and human rights than this Ben Ali. It was extremely frustrating, and we used to have also elections, and of course the election all the time. This 90%, 40% for the president. Some of you perhaps remember that I tried to be candidate in 1994, and just 2 weeks after the end of this election, I was put in jail and spent some 4 months or 5 months in solitary confinement. So at that time, I thought, look, we don't have any, we cannot complain to anybody in Tunisia, because we don't have, of course, we cannot have a constitutional court to say that those elections are fake. You have to do something about this election. So why not having an international constitutional court, where people like me and the opposition, where people having this harsh and corrupted dictatorship can complain and say, look, there is something wrong with the elections, and please do something. It was just a romantic idea, and I didn't expect that someday I will be in position, to try to make this dream being a reality. When I was elected president, I thought this would be my occasion, to transform this dream in reality. And I was very surprised by the fact that many scholars in Tunisia and outside Tunisia found that this could be a workable idea and not just a dream. And we have had a lot of meeting in Tunis about this, about how to transform this idea in workable a project. And 2 years ago, I tried to convince some of my friends, head of state, some democratic states in Africa and in Latin America to accept to be part of the project. And I was very happy to see that now about 20 countries now are supporting the project. So I know that the African Union is going to make an assessment about this idea next summit, so it will become an official idea not only of Tunisia but also of the African Union. And well, I don't have any illusion it will take time, because the International Criminal Court, it took more than 5 decades, to achieve the process. So it will take time. But imagine that one day we will have this court. That it means that dictatorship, which is, I'm not sure that we are going to rid of dictatorship. Dictatorship is like diseases. You will never get from disease. It's a social disease, and we are going to have the next decades the comeback of dictatorship. I hope not in Tunisia, but you can expect the dictatorship everywhere. So we have to be not only, the International Criminal Court is to cure the disease, but to prevent the disease, we have to have this International Constitutional Court. Because imagine that you have an election like in Syria in 2000, and imagine that this court would say, this is not fair election, you are not a legal president, we are not going to accept you in the UN meeting, we are going to boycott you. And now probably the democratic state, the democratic state like United States, like European, etc., would be obliged to not recognize those regimes. That would probably help the Syrian people, and I'm not sure that we would have this kind of chaos we have now in Syria. I don't know whether I will see in my lifetime this court. I hope so, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure also to see a democratic Arab world. But what I am sure of, that struggle will continue, and that we will have to face harsh times, but we don't have the choice, because if we let things going like we have had for more than 2 decades, that's the end of the Arab world. We are, when you see that poverty is rising, when you see that employment is exploding, when you see that means that violence is not very far, and that the whole Arab world could be really in a mess, and that it could be a danger not only for the Arabs themselves, but for the whole region, for Europe and for the West. So promoting democracy, promoting human rights, promoting development is a question of life or death for our nation and for also the peace of the world. I'm going to stop here because I told you that I will not talk about more than 20 minutes. I would be happy to answer your question, and thank you so much.
We're going to get some questions from the audience. Let me just begin with one of my own, Mr. President. The world had an electric reaction to what happened in Tunisia, where the Arab Spring had its origins. I think there also was a very positive reaction to your becoming president, because your background is a background of human rights. I must say that was an honest but somewhat depressing account you just gave right now of how the Arab Spring is going and what the possibilities are. Have you found that being in office, it simply is more difficult than you thought it was going to be?
Oh yes, it's much more difficult, much more difficult. I always say that when I was in prison, I used to sleep, but I don't sleep very much now when I'm in Carthage. Yes, of course. Because you discover that it's really extremely complex. It's very, power is extremely frustrating experience because you think that you can do everything and that in fact you are facing a lot of obstacles, For instance, I just give you an idea about how frustrating it can be. You probably know that we have the revolution because the high rate of employment, of poverty, and so forth. So when we said we have to put a lot of money in this region, in the region of Gafsa, Sidi Bouzid, where everything began. Well, you have the political will and you have the money, you have the resources, but nothing happened. Why? Because the bureaucracy would do anything it can, to avoid this money to reach the population, and then you have even citizens. Imagine that in this region we badly need foreign investment and even Tunisian investment, but investors would say we never go there because people are, demonstrating all time and so forth. So you have the bureaucracy, you have the population itself, and then you have many other obstacles. People would like to have a factory. Okay, we are going to build a factory. We wanted it now. Yeah, what does it mean now? If you want this factory now, that it means that you have to wait 4 or 5 years before. No, we wanted it now. Well, tell me how. How do you want me to make like this? And then you have a factory. So you see how frustrating it's, and of course that as I told you, when you have a revolution, you have the counter-revolution, and you have to deal with this counter-revolution. As a human rights activist, you cannot say just put them in jail or something like that. So you have to be very, very careful. You have to accept long-term solution of the problem. But I must say that even if it's difficult, it's extremely rewarding because it's an honor for me to be in this position. I can do something. I'm not completely without, but it's you see that how complex, and that really it takes a lot of time. And this is the most important lesson. It takes time. We need time, and this is why. Please don't say that it's over or it's failed. We need, I would say, 2 or 3 decades to say that the Arab Spring has failed or has succeeded.
And then one other question about Syria, which is the obsession of the moment. You actually extended the possibility of offering asylum to Assad. Can you talk about that a bit? I mean, that obviously was your way of suggesting one way out of this situation. Do you see this ultimately being a political solution, maybe in Geneva rather than in the area?
No, the problem, no, you talk about asylum. Now it looks like a joke because, in fact, it was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I remember I answered one journalist. I said, life is much more important than justice. If this dictator accept, to step down and to leave Syria, we can accept to take him in Tunisia and to guarantee him safe haven. And I remember that many people were saying, how can you say that? And my response was always, life, is much more important than justice. Then if the price to pay is to accept that, to give guarantee to this dictator, because we can avoid the loss of life of thousands of people, I accept to do so. But now the problem is completely different because, after 2 years now, we are reaching about 100,000 people dead and more than 7 million displaced people and so forth. I think here is really a criminal. And but I would say that even if we can be sure that the nightmare could be stopped in Syria by giving this guarantee to this criminal, it will be terrible to say yes, but we have to say yes. But once again, saving life is much more important than to put this man in jail for the rest of his life. Now, the problem itself. I'm not seeing any kind of solution without putting the pressure on Iranian and on Russian. And because otherwise the slaughter would continue. This morning I have a meeting, very good meeting with the President Rouhani. He seems very open. Yesterday, the speech of President Obama also was extremely interesting because he also opened, possibility of having dialogue with Iran. So I am a little bit optimistic about the outcome, and probably in the 2 or 3 months to come, find a political solution.
If there were a political move to settle the war in Syria, should the Iranians be part of that solution?
Of course, because they are playing an important role. So it's sure that we cannot have any political solution against or without Russians or Iranians.
Sure. I'd love to get some questions from the floor. And Mr. President, I may take 3 at once, if you don't mind, and we can answer them. So we'll start right here. First one, second one, and third one.
Shazia Rafi, Secretary General of Parliamentarians for Global Action. Mr. President, it's wonderful to see you here again. Thank you for hosting us last year in Tunis and meeting with our delegation. My question, when you're talking about both democracy in the Arab Spring and also this very interesting idea of a constitutional court related to post-electoral violence, is what role do you see for parliamentarians and parliaments in that? And would you be taking this proposal also to the Assembly of the Interparliamentary Union and organizations like Parliamentarians for Global Action, whose assembly will be taking place later this year in Colombia? I know the IPU is next week in Geneva. It would be good, given that Parliament is one of the main pillars of democracy, to involve the legislatures in such an idea.
Excellent. Just pass the microphone to Omar behind you. Thank you.
Mr. President, thank you very much for coming, and I very much enjoyed your presentation. My name is Omar El Okta. I am with IPI. My question is about the constitution drafting process in Tunisia right now. You mentioned Egypt and the path that the Egyptians are taking, and many analysts would suggest that what happened to President Morsi was a result of his own constitutional coup in November 2012. So given the kind of path that the Constitutional Assembly in Tunisia is taking, and its sort of ups and downs, I heard it was suspended in August because of the crisis, and as well the diversity of your political scene, what measures are the Tunisians now taking to essentially prevent a similar fate, to produce a document that is inclusive of all members of the political arena, from Ennahda to the influential UGTT, the General Labor Union in Tunisia, etc. I'm just curious, in light of what's been happening, what's going on at this moment? Thank you.
And the third question, the gentleman here on the side.
Thank you. Jean-Marc Oppenheim, Professor of History at Columbia and Fordham Universities. Thank you for your remarks, and especially their candor. I'd like to ask you to address the issue that has come up recently in the Constituent Assembly in the last couple of weeks about the fact that, I don't know if it's a law or it is being discussed, becoming a law, the Tunisian women under 35 years old would have to receive the permission of their fathers or husbands to travel outside the country.
Okay.
Could you answer all 3 of those at once?
Yes. Well, for the first question, of course, I think that if we had the support of the parliamentarian all over the world, this would be a great help, because we do believe that now we are trying to sell the idea to the NGOs and to the parliament all over the world, because we personally, I don't expect much enthusiasm from states, because you understand why, especially from Arab states. So the support is to come from parliaments, because, of course, because they are elected by the people, because they, I think this kind of idea can be interesting for them, and also trying to find support from the civil society, because it's a typical idea of a civil society militant. Now, about the constitutional process in Tunisia, you probably know that we have chosen different way, different path, completely different than Egypt. Probably the most difficult because we have decided first to elect a constituent assembly, and then you have to have commissions. And then, to write, I think we wrote 3 drafts until now, and then to have discussion with the civil society, discussion with the young, the women, and the process has taken more than 6 months just in discussion, and then probably 1,000 people have been involved in the discussion and the writing the constitution, and we have had about six commission working on the preamble and the human rights and so forth. So we deliberately chose to have this very long and very difficult process because we wanted this constitution to be the Tunisian. Every Tunisian should be quite sure that this constitution it's his or hers. But where is Mabrouka? Is here? I think she will give you perhaps more information because she is part of this assembly and she is part of the process, and maybe she could give you more information. Mabrouka, would you tell her what happened?
Can we get a microphone, please?
Mabrouka Mbarak. I'm a member of the Constituent Assembly, member of the committee that is tasked to draft the preamble, fundamental principle, and the rules to amend the Constitution. I have an interesting vantage point because I'm inside the rooms, and I can tell you it's been a wonderful adventures, and I wish the media was showing all the animated debate that we have for almost a year and a half. Our experience was unique because we decided to write a consensus-based constitution and to have everyone participate. I traveled from Tunis to Oslo to Montreal to have people tell me what they want in their constitution. And I saw people who'd said, with tears in their eyes, that they left the country for 23 years and they wouldn't think a moment that they will be told to write their own constitution. So yes, it takes time, and I hope that everyone will know what happened behind the curtains in Tunisia. It takes a lot of time because it's not easy. Everyone wants to write the constitution based on how they experienced the dictatorship. So everyone wants to impose. And when you know people who are with you in committees, you understand why it's taking so much time. You understand why we're talking about identity. I wish we can talk more about economy, but it's the thing. Then, the president of my committee, for example, spent more than 16 years in jail with the only book to read is the Quran. So no wonder why he has this perception, it's normal. In the end of the day, it's how do we live together and make sure that this document includes everyone. It's not going to be the perfect document because consensus, I think, is the definition of imperfection. Not everyone will be completely satisfied, but not everyone will be completely dissatisfied. And it's taking a lot of time, but we were reaching really the end of it. And unfortunately, a colleague of mine, a member of the Constituent Assembly, has been assassinated. And this is part of the counter-revolution. We have to live with that. With every revolution, just as President Marzouki said, there's always a counter-revolution. And this has put on hold the whole process. I wish people knew more. I wish I can write more. I tweet all my committee sessions, so you would know maybe more what's happening behind the curtains. Because as a member of the Constituent Assembly, I've never heard about this law about not letting women travel below 35 years old. I've never heard about it. We have to be really careful with what the media are saying. Just about the women's right, I just wanted to say that for us it was really important to enshrine the legacy of President Bourguiba, who's really keen on defending women's rights. And right on the preamble, we wrote that citizen, men and women, are equal in rights and duty. And I have a lot of male colleagues that say, "You sure about your duty? You sure you want to do the military?" And we said, yes, we want to be equal. And I don't know how you can top that. right in the preamble. So again, we have to be really careful, and I wish there was more transparency on the process. I wish I had more time to write about I hope I'll be able to write about it so that I can share my experience and what happened in the backyard. Behind the curtain. Thank you.
Thomas, I think that was an answer to your question. So I'm going to get some other questions for the President. Bill Pace, here on the aisle, and there, Saul.
Oh, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you very much. Bill Pace, I am General Secretary of an old peace group. Our largest project is the International Criminal Court, is a global NGO coalition for the International Criminal Court. We're very pleased that your comments about the ICC earlier. As a member of the African Union, I hope Tunisia will stand up and defend the Rome Statute and the ICC in the African Union, the controversies that are surrounding the ICC in Africa at this point. And the second thing is on the interesting initiative that you raised. We have 800 or 900 member organizations in Africa, but I can just say I think the Pan-African Lawyers Union, headquartered in Arusha, would be a tremendous group to get involved with your Constitutional Court initiative, and I think they would be honored and pleased to work with you, and I agree with you that civil society will be crucial to taking such an initiative forward.
Gentleman here on the aisle, yes.
Thank you. My name is Kofi Afande, legal advisor to Togo in the Security Council. I join my voice to my predecessor to thank you for the presentation and enlightening us in the situation in Tunisia. Unfortunately, I was also in Tunisia in the process of some discussion on the constitution. I didn't have the privilege to meet you, but I hope when I come next time, I can find my way to you. My question will be mainly relating to the idea of international constitutional court. I believe to have understood that you didn't give to it now a very elaborated thought. But I want just to know if there is any document or any circle where that has been discussed in terms of the different parameters which will be taken into account. Meaning, are we moving towards a global constitutional order, or that court will be deciding over national constitutional orders, knowing that not all countries also in this world have constitutions? Then just to limit it to that, what will be the procedure? How do you foresee it so that if there is a document that we can rely on, we start giving a thought to it? Thank you.
Do you remember who I pointed out for the third question? Very good. Saul, yes, indeed.
Thank you. First of all, Mr. President, thank you very much for your excellent presentation and very honest presentation too. I have two different, I am Saul Weisletter. I'm the DPR of Costa Rica to the UN. I have two very different topics. The first one has to do with your project about the Constitution. I'd like to know, or later somebody can tell me, which Latin American countries have been involved in that. And secondly, of course, I cannot commit my country, but certainly we would be very interested in at least reading the whatever it's written and about the process, and maybe we can also later get involved much more on that. Of course, as I say, I'm not committing anything, but it sounds as an interesting idea that we would need to analyze it deeper. The second is a question related to the Arab world, the other geographical context that you spoke. Some people say that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is the core of the situation in that area. We know that there are negotiations going on right now between Israelis and Palestinians, thankfully in a very quiet way, and we hope they will continue like that. So what's your appreciation about those conversations and the possible result, and if they reach an agreement, what impact do you think it will have in the region? Thank you very much.
Could you answer those three?
Yes. I'll begin with probably the ICC with Africa. I don't know, probably what...
Oh, sorry.
You are thinking about what's the problem with the Kenyan president and the vice president? Is that
And the AU, the proposal that AU countries should withdraw from the ICC?
Yes, I have a discussion, interesting discussion today with Dr. Zuma about this very specific topic. And I said, look, I understand that some African leaders are complaining about the fact that the ICC is always behind African leaders. But I said this is because we, most important dictators, are African. And the ICC is good for Africa because we badly need it. That we have to stick to the ICC and we have to support it. And that Tunisia is not going to participate to any summit about, how to. We will never do anything against the ICC. This is my position, and I told her very frankly that it would be a very bad message given to the world if it seems like we African leaders we are going to gather in a special summit just for two people. Of course, we would want like to the ICC to be politicized. They should find a consensus with the Kenyan leaders, but we have to accept that ICC is extremely important for Africa. This is my opinion, and I was very clear about that. And this is the official position of Tunisia. I will answer your question about the countries, Latin American countries supporting the idea of ICC, Ecuador, Peru, and Uruguay. Last year we have an important meeting in Lima. It was Latin American and Arab country summit. And I discussed it with the leaders of this country, and they gave their support. So if we have another countries, it will be great. You can talk with my legal advisor, and he will give you all information needed about the Arab-Israeli conflict. Of course, we support everything that could lead to peace, and I know that there are a lot of discussion. And that maybe we could have good surprises in 2 or 3 months' time, and this would be probably something very exciting for the whole world. Now, about your question, I would like to give the floor to my legal advisor because he is in charge of this this project, and he will give you more technical details. Ahmed.
Excellent. We'll take 3 more. I have to say the president has to leave exactly at 5 o'clock, so we're running out of time. John Hirsch in the front row, gentleman back there, and I'll take a third. If not, we'll just take those 2. You go.
Yes.
Some words to
Absolutely. I didn't know. I thought that was for later. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Ahmed Urfili, I'm the legal advisor to the President of the Republic. There was a question concerning the applicable law which will be applied by the International Constitutional Court. First, concerning the documents, there is a document which was distributed in maybe a limited quantity, which is this one. It is now made in 3 languages, Arabic, French, and English. It presents the main ideas about this project and the main texts also, which contain references which be useful in order to identify this International Constitutional Court. There are essentially a number of international conventions, charters, and also case law, and also maybe some customary principles. But mainly the international constitutional law which will be applied by this court is turning around the idea of the democratic principle. And second, as you know, which is the case for most courts in the history of humanity, for having a court, you have, at the beginning, a body of principles. But after that, the court itself builds its own rules or clarifies these rules. So the international constitutional rules exist yet, but they will be clarified by the International Constitutional Court itself. Last information is that we are building a website concerning this idea, which is now has the address of www.carthage.tn. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now, John.
John Hirsch with IPI. First of all, thank you very much for everything you've said here today. I want to follow up on Bill Pace's question about the ICC and the African Union. We had the Kenyan ambassador here, this very place, 10 days ago, and basically the Kenyan government has decided to leave the ICC. It's virtually a fait accompli. And the African Union is on record publicly as ready to encourage other countries to renounce the Rome Statute. So Mike, and you've been excellent in your response just now, but I want to ask you whether you would consider, as Tunisia, mobilizing publicly a counterforce of other African member states to not have the African Union take that position, rather than this just becoming a fait accompli, and then your country and a few others get up and say, well, we regret this, but then it's a kind of a fait accompli. So I think there's a moment of opportunity here, and I really, great opportunity to see you to say this to you.
I began to do so.
So if you could make this very public and really put pressure on the Commission, Madame Zuma, I mean, you know, there's a political decision, not a legal decision, and it really endangers the ICC itself, which is a really fundamental instrument of international law. So thank you so much. But if you could comment briefly on that.
Respond now, and I'll get the last question afterwards.
Yeah.
Oh,
Please.
No, feel free to respond to that.
Yes, yes. I began to do so. I began to discuss with many African leaders, saying, "Hey, it would be extremely dangerous for Africa, for the image of Africa, and we have to stick." As I told you, I will be very firm on this point. Believe me, I will never accept Tunisia to be part of this dangerous game, and I will do my best to say that once again we need this international criminal court. We need it for the sake of Africa, and we have to stick to it.
And then the final question, gentleman in the back.
Thank you very much. My name is Fred Smith from Radio LIB, #1 African radio station in the diaspora. Yeah. Thank you very much. My first question seems to center around the Arab Springs. It seems to be a revolution, if you will agree with me, of younger people revolution versus the revolution of your predecessor, and with the help of social media. But what your take on it, being that other Arab countries have tried and have failed? Now, the West African country, like my country, Liberia, the younger people are trying to test that same approach from Arab Spring to bring our president down. And could you say, with all the Arab Spring, will you be talking to us today? What help did it help you? And my last question on the code that you're trying to set up and will be presented to the African Union. You see a lot of African leaders seems to be tried, the ICCC, including my former president, Charles Taylor. The African Union seems to be the better way to try African leaders on the sword of Africa. Do you think your approach will be much better in helping African leaders try dictators and corrupt leaders try on the continent versus try with the International Criminal Court? What method with your approach will be best for trying African leaders?
Thank you.
Well, I have had, as I told you, a lot of discussion about the International Criminal Court and Africa. And some of African leaders told me that why not effectively try African leaders in Africa? Why not trying to have an African criminal court? And say that it's a nonsense because we are not fighting against dictatorship in Africa. We are fighting against dictatorship all over the world. It's an international problem. It's not an African problem. And if we do that, that means that we suppose that dictatorship is just an African problem. It is not. It is not. So we need an international body. So I don't agree at all to have. And look, it will not no credibility to this African court, because everybody would say those Africans, they are trying to protect themselves, and it doesn't mean nothing. The first question, if I understood it, is that what we call the Arab Spring is the response of Arabs to a very specific situation. Of course, corruption is all over the world the same, but the way of dealing, how to respond to the problem, I think it's a matter of culture. It's a matter of political equilibrium in the society and so forth. So we have nothing to export. It's our experience. We have to solve the same problem, the universal problem, if I may say, the corruption, dictatorship, and so we have to solve it. We have to find our local solution to a universal problem. This is what should be done everywhere. This is why I say we cannot export our experience. We just have to learn from other people how do they manage this problem, and then to invent our proper our means.
Mr. President, I've been thinking, listening to you, that one of the consequences of naming somebody with a human rights background to become president is that you get direct, honest, and non-defensive answers to the questions. I really appreciate that, and I want to speak to your request and your colleagues' request that, and I think I presume to speak for the room now, you have asked, give us time. I think this room is very willing to give you time, believes in the project, and is wishing everything we can do to support that. And Mr. President, you rather feelingly said you needed our prayers. And I think, once again, I can speak for this room in saying I'm sure you have the support, the prayerful support of this entire room. Thank you very much for coming here.